Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book The Litigators by John Grisham. If you're new to my channel, I have recently been getting into John Grisham books over the course of the last year. In 2022, I read 4 John Grisham novels. I read his first book, A Time to Kill, which I was amazed by and just utterly wowed me. And then I was like, man, that's going to be hard to top. And then I read Sycamore Row, which definitely topped it for me, and I was like, man, he's amazing as a writer. And then I read A Time for Mercy, which wasn't quite as good as the other two, but was just in that ballpark of amazingness. And then I read The Summons, which I thought was okay. So it was fine. It was not a great book, but it was fine. So overall, I'm loving what I'm reading with John Grisham, and I've had a blast getting through his books. And so I picked up The Litigators, hoping it would be an entertaining book. And sometimes I'll talk with my dad, who's a big John Grisham fan, and I think my dad's read almost every single one of Grisham's books. And every time I talk to him about a book, he usually gives me like his general impressions about it. And for The Litigators, he was actually quite mum on his impressions, which I'm kind of glad he was, because this was a pleasant surprise for me. So this book is dealing with tort lawsuits. It is dealing with this small operation of a small law firm that decides to sue a big pharmaceutical company over their pill that is supposed to lower body fat, but they allege, the lawyers allege that it actually is killing people, it's causing heart attacks. And so it's a big lawsuit, and they think they're going to make millions of dollars, and they're going to hit it big, and they're going to retire and have it really nice. And obviously, things do not go out well for them, and it's all about the fallout from this lawsuit. And this book centers around one main character, and then there's 2 other characters that are with him. So the law firm is the law firm of Finley and Figg. It's Oscar Finley, who's a 60-something-year-old man, and Wally Figg, who's like a 40-something. And Oscar, he's just done with life. And he's kind of just like hoping just to keep hanging on. Whereas Wally, he wants to hit it big, and he wants to do these big lawsuits, and he wants to get his name in the newspapers and all this stuff. And they have this really tiny little law firm in Chicago, which is a rare, most of John Grisham's books take place in Mississippi. So to see this one take place in Chicago is a very different setting for him, but it works really well for him. And then they have this assistant, the secretary named Rochelle Gibson, who is very much an interesting character because she does not like a lot of the stuff that they do, and she's kind of the one sane person in the group. And the 2 gentlemen, Finley and Figg, they're just despicable individuals. And the main character of the novel is someone who joins their law firm, and that is a guy named David Zink. David is this 31-year-old young lawyer who has been working for several years at this humongous, like 600-person law firm, and he hates it there. It's so monotonous. He works 100 hours a week. He never gets to spend time with his wife, and he's just done with it. And so he gets drunk, and he decides to leave, and he decides to join up with these 2 wackos. And really, the audience really thinks, are you really sure this is your best option? Of all the places you could go, you're deciding to go join these wackos? And he does, and so he's kind of like the third wheel on their operation, so you see everything through his eyes as these 2 guys are trying to do big lawsuits and hit it big, and he's just trying to hang on for dear life. And so obviously, the main character, who's David Zink, is the most interesting character of the book for me. Almost all the books from his perspective, but also he just has this innocence and this kind of goodness about him that the other characters don't. So for one thing, he obviously understands lawyer things because he's a lawyer. He is not naive that these guys are ambulance chasers, because that's what they are. They literally chase ambulances in a few scenes of this book. And so he understands these are not the most reputable of lawyers. But at the same time, he thinks maybe he can do some good, and also he thinks this is the only way to really break in as a lawyer and not just as someone doing paperwork. So he thinks this is an opportunity to learn, and he's like, I'll learn and then I'll get out of here. Well, in this book, when he's learning, he, of course, has to learn about all the bad things that these guys do. And in the first day of work, he sees all of the horrendous things that these two ambulance chasers do, and yet he still decides to stay, which is a really interesting choice. But it was a lot of fun to read about because these guys are just scoundrels, and he's the one honorable guy trying to do everything honorably. And that's why at one point in the book, he actually kind of hides a lawsuit that he's doing from them because he doesn't want them to get their hands on it because they'll take it too far and they'll be sleazeballs, and instead he's going to handle it the right way that he wants to. And so I had a blast with this book. There's so much that's good about it. This is I think it's perfectly paced. I think it is exciting throughout. I think that there's never a point where the book lags. It's just the right length. It's shorter than the A Time to books, A Time to Kill, Sycamore Row, and Time for Mercy. But it's shorter than those books, but it's longer than The Summons. Which The Summons was just like a quick little teeny tiny story. It was more of a mystery than it was a legal thriller. This one, it's much more in line of there's courtroom drama. There's the whole getting the process of all the witnesses and the experts and all that stuff. So if you like that stuff in the A Time To books, you'll like this book. And also this book has a different angle that it's dealing with tort law instead of criminal law. And this book also deals with a single moral character in a world of very evil characters. There's a lot of fantasy books that explore this. The Legend of Drizzt, everyone in his family and everyone in his society is evil, but Drizzt is the one good character. That's kind of the way the Litigators works. Is David Zink is the one good moral character, other than maybe his wife. But everyone else is pretty much evil, horrible people in this book. And so I really liked the themes that it explored, but it didn't have the deep themes that the other books. For instance, A Time to Kill deals with self-defense and with racism. Sycamore Row deals with racism and reparations and other things. And then A Time for Mercy deals with things of some things of racism, but also things about the death penalty. So they're dealing with really deep themes, and this book just doesn't in the same way. It deals with the themes of corruption among lawyers, and it deals with themes of tort law, and it certainly explored it a lot. I understand tort law a lot better now because of reading this book, but it's just not as deep as the other books. So naturally, I'm going to give a little bit more weight to the other books because they have that extra little deeper thing. But in terms of enjoyment, I enjoyed this just as much as I enjoyed the others, and in fact got just as viscerally angry because of things happening in this book, which John Grisham has an amazing propensity to make me angry, which I really like, because he gets me feeling for things in the book. And this book, I had planned on reading it over the course of 2, maybe 3 days. I was able to read it in 1 day because it was just so good. It was just so action-packed and keeping me going. And there are a lot of minor characters I could talk about that really make this book really fleshed out. The lawyer for the drug companies, Nadine Caros. The lawyer who kind of is the person that flies in to try to help our guys, Jerry Alessandros. He's really interesting, a sleazy guy. You also have the different people that they're representing, the people whose names are on the lawsuits but don't really want their names on the lawsuits. All that stuff deals with themes about like them paying money for referrals. When should that be legal? Should that be ethical and moral? It deals with all that stuff, and there are some interesting twists in this book. There's basically 2 main lawsuits. The main one is the one with Cariox, which is this drug that they're alleging kills people, and then there's this other one about a toy company. And both I pretty much knew exactly how they would play out. but there's still little individual twists within their stories. In the main lawsuit, there was one chapter where I started to go, wait a second, this could go the other way, and then by the end of the chapter, I was like, no, it's going to go the way I thought it was going to go. But it still was excellently written. And there's actually something interesting in here, which is because our main character is so pure, but everyone around him is so bad, you actually root for him to lose the Carriox lawsuit, but win the other one. But you actually want him to lose the main lawsuit because they bungle it so bad and because they're so poorly prepared. And I'm just so amazed at the way that Grisham is able to thread that, because that's a difficult thing to do, because you want to cheer for your protagonist, but he wants to make you cheer against his goal in this particular book. So I just thought that was a really fascinating idea, and I thought that he was able to carry out that idea basically to perfection. And then also there is a little bit of a theme where, as I mentioned, the guys are sleazebags. And in one scene, one of the guys has a woman who's seeking a divorce, and she doesn't have the money to pay the bill. And so she suggests an alternative form of payment that's not money, and the other lawyer takes it. And you realize just how despicable this guy is. But David is so against it, and he is afraid of any perception of immorality. He runs out of the room, and he runs to his wife to tell her the story. And he's just so afraid of doing the wrong thing and so afraid of doing anything that's improper. And you just really feel for him, because you're like, you are a moral, upstanding, good guy when this scene happens. And he's very faithful to his wife throughout the book, which when he had opportunity not to be so. But I really liked that he was so faithful to his wife throughout the book. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was well done. It's not my favorite John Grisham novel, but I think it's one of his most entertaining that I've read. I've read 5 now, and 4 of the 5 have been like near perfection. And that's a really good batting average. John Grisham is certainly in my top 10 favorite authors of all time. And I just curious where he'll land once I read more of his books. And I have plenty more to read, which I'm very excited. Our next plan is to read the next one sometime in March, which means the video will probably come out in April. So overall, I'll give this a 9.6 out of 10. This is currently, this is the 6th book I've read this year. This is currently my favorite read of the year, although I still have a long time to go. I think that this will end up among my top 10 maybe by the end of the year. It's certainly a qualified, well worth it book. But I enjoyed the heck out of this book. It was delightfully written. So that is my review of John Grisham's The Litigators. A fantastic entry. A lot of people didn't like it when I read the good reviews on Goodreads, and I don't know why, because I mentioned everything I loved about it. But if you've read this book, do you have thoughts on it? Did you like it, or did you dislike it? Were you one of the people that disliked it? Let me know all those thoughts in the comments. I have book reviews of every other John Grisham book that I have read on the channel, so please subscribe so you can, and go watch all of those. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.